What's up, guys? I am going to talk about my experiences with ride sharing here in Mexico. We've been here for about 2.5 months, basically in 4 places: Cancun, Merida, Mexico City, and Playa del Carmen. So I think that at this point I'm finished with ride shares during this time in Mexico, so I'm going to kind of look back. I'll start by saying Lyft is my preferred ride-sharing company because I am a Chase Sapphire Reserve holder. I have Lyft Pink, but Lyft isn't available here in Mexico. Uber is pretty ubiquitous, and so it was my go-to app when we were in Cancun, Merida, and Mexico City. But I didn't want to just rely on one app, especially because Uber tended to be the most expensive. They also charge their drivers the most. And so my secondary app over these last few months has been DiDi. DiDi is a Chinese app, and my wife and I have used it previously in China. And the thing with DiDi here in Mexico is that their credit card processing system, for some reason, at least for my wife and me, was very problematic. When we were in Cancun, I could not use the credit card at all. So when we did use DiDi, I was always paying cash. When we went to Merida, a lot of times it would accept our payment for a ride, but then we wouldn't be able to tip. So then I always made sure after that first time to tip the drivers with cash. But interestingly, when we got to Mexico City, for some reason, either it was the geographic location or it was just the fact that I had accumulated so many rides with DiDi, the credit card started working again wonderfully for like 2 or 3 weeks. Pretty much, I should say, it worked without fail. The only thing is that every once in a while I would have an issue authorizing my card to be used on DiDi, and then I would just switch to my other card that I had saved in my profile, and then it would work. So sometimes the same card wouldn't work after a while, and then I'd have to change cards, and then it would work. Until the last like 4 or 5 days in Mexico, suddenly then completely stopped working again. So I don't know what it is, but DiDi is just funny that I would definitely say you can rely on Uber, and then you'll want a secondary app to be sort of your backup for comparison's sake. It was not strange at all for DiDi to be like half or even a third of the price of Uber. So you just want to be able to compare. It was very quick. I got very used to just like punching in the addresses on the app or saving addresses that we went to frequently. And yeah, so Uber and then a secondary app. DiDi would be ours and probably the recommended one as long as you're okay paying cash. And one nice thing about DiDi is you can also record your audio throughout your entire ride, so that's sort of another enhanced safety measure. A couple of things I was going to add, I forgot. With Uber, you get a set fare, and that's it. Unless you change something about your trip, your price won't change. With DiDi, I did notice that the price would change based on a change in the route, which was not up to me. Obviously with traffic and when the driver took a different route. And there were other times too when there's a lot of traffic, then the DiDi price would end up being different at the end of the ride than it was at the beginning. That was like maybe, I think, 3 times that happened in Mexico City. I did have one time that I distinctly remember where the price ended up lower than what I had agreed upon. So it's just good to note that the DiDi price is not set in stone. And then the last thing I was going to mention is that in Merida, when it was time to go to the airport to leave, I could not find any Uber XLs. Come to think of it, I don't think I ever saw any Uber XLs in Merida, so that's just another thing to note. A lot of the Uber X's and DiDis in Merida are very small cars. So for our trip to the airport, I couldn't find an Uber XL, so I ended up having to double app it. I called one Uber for me and one of our kids, and I called a DiDi for my wife and our other kid, and that's how we went to the Merida airport. Another app I ended up using a bit was InDriver. In-driver is a little different in that you kind of negotiate the fare with drivers. So you throw out a number where you're going, when you put out a price, and then if a driver accepts, then you're connected, or a driver can make their own offer and then you can counter, go back and forth, or you can accept their offer. But in-driver as well, once you negotiate, it is still cash payments only. But in-driver, you can usually get a good deal because those drivers get most of the fare payment. In-driver takes the smallest cut compared to Uber or DiDi. And then lastly, I used Beat in Mexico City. So I don't know if Beat is available in other cities, but in Mexico City specifically, I was able to use Beat for rides. And Beat, they have the sort of UberX type of and DiDi type of ride sharing, but then they also have their own fleet of vehicles. So you could take their fleet, which includes Tesla, so you could specifically select a Tesla if you want. The ride with Beat was totally fine, but I definitely noticed that their app isn't as well built out. Just the way their GPS works, clearly not as good as Uber or DiDi. The way you can sort of select your pickup spots, not as good on Beat. And also Beat, once you're in a ride, you can't do anything else on the app. So once you've called a car, like I couldn't change payment, I couldn't go to my profile or do anything. It was just the ride only. And then Beat also didn't give any functionality for leaving a tip in the app, which I didn't know until after my ride was over. I thought surely there's a way, but I searched and searched and couldn't. So I ended up not tipping that driver. And then lastly, I'll just mention sort of pricing. So riding Uber or DiDi compared to the US is incredibly cheap. And in Merida, generally speaking, we were getting everywhere that we needed to go for $2 to $5 per pop. As I said, DiDi usually was even less. In Mexico City, it's a little bit more expensive, but still really cheap. And you can also consider how cheap it is to ride the metro in Mexico City. I believe, from my awareness and experience, probably the cheapest metro that I've seen that can really cover a lot of ground. It's amazing for just 5 pesos per ride, or 25 cents US. You can get anywhere the metro goes in Mexico City. So when you consider that cost of transportation, it sort of puts it in context and makes sense that Uber prices are actually quite high in comparison to the metro and the rest of public transit. So, and then in Cancun, that was the last thing I was going to mention. Cancun, still very affordable Uber rides, but Cancun is a little bit trickier because of the taxi mafia. So you can't necessarily get an Uber ride everywhere you are. A few times from the hotel zone, we decided to take the bus because the bus was much more practical. Same thing with DiDi. It's tough to get an Uber or a DiDi from certain parts of Cancun. And to go to certain areas, pricing was much higher than it typically is. So Cancun can be a little bit quirky. Merida, extremely cheap. Mexico City, not so bad. And here now we are in Playa del Carmen, and there's no ride sharing. Playa is a much smaller area. We're here in Centro. We can walk everywhere. So I do believe that I am done with all ride sharing here in Mexico. But there is Uber Eats, interestingly enough. There's no Uber here in Playa del Carmen, but there's Uber Eats, so I am still using Uber Eats. Anyway, I think that's it. Peace. Thanks for watching. It's a pretty simple Airbnb. 1 bedroom, nice bathroom. Pleasant looking. Got a mirror here, water, 2 beds, very large closets, desk, and a little balcony that doesn't really look out into anything, but you can chill there if you want to be outside. And then the closet.